Um, This is the meeting, I'm gonna read the agenda first and let everyone know this meeting is being recorded. It's the Town of Saugus Zoning Board of Appeals on September 4th, 2025. Deliberation on an application by 961 Broadway Development LLC for a comprehensive permit pursuant to MGL C40B 20-23 and 70 CMR 56 to authorize the construction of 189 rental units, 48 perpetually restricted as affordable units at 80% AMI in two structures on an approximately 6.77 acre parcel of land located at 961 Broadway, lot number 1, plan number 1029, and 999 Broadway, lot 2, plan 1029, and 39 Rare Forest Street, lot 64, plan number 1029, with 315 parking spaces. No testimony or public comment may be taken since the public hearing on this application has been closed. And also, we may address topics not reasonably anticipated at the time of the original posting. If I could have a pledge allegiance to the flag. I said that.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Led by Chris Riley.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I think we would still take the oath to tell the truth, so I pledge to tell the truth,
Whole truth.
whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
You got it.
All right. I asked Mr. Rossetti to print out a few copies of the conditions. Did you do so?
Yep, they're right
Oh,
here.
you got me.
That was a complete, 48 pages,
Okay.
double-sided.
Okay. All right. So I would think we go with the format and just getting right into the conditions and start with the first one in place, and then we'll discuss this between our members, and we'll ask the attorney for any assistance and such.
Mr. Chair, before you get to the conditions,
Yes.
did you want to talk about any other aspects of the decision, or do you want to go straight to the conditions?
What would you, what aspects might you recommend?
Well, there's a couple of points that I did want to highlight in the earlier sections of the decision, and I did want to bring to the board's attention that I have been in touch with the applicant's representatives, including a phone conversation this afternoon at your direction, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
We provide a copy of the draft decision with them, and
Yeah.
ask that they provide some feedback, which they have provided to me. So as we go through the decision, I'll highlight where they've requested changes or made comments.
Okay.
If that's helpful for the board.
All right. Sounds good to me.
Okay. So just maybe as a reminder, as we get into this, just coming back to the very beginning of what we're all here for. So the decision that I've drafted for you, it's based on various sources. A lot of it comes from the draft that was prepared by the applicant's representatives. A lot of that came from a prior draft the board issued for the Toll Brothers Saugus Ridge 40B project.
Yes.
And some of the conditions come from the peer review consultants, the town department heads, as well as conditions that are regularly imposed on recent developments in the Business Highway Sustainable Development District as approved by the planning board. So some of those have been incorporated. But for this process, this being a 40B, what you all are here to make the determinations on And these conditions that I've drafted for you, these are suggestions, these are up to your discretion to decide whether they're appropriate to address the testimony that you've heard during the hearing. Sometimes you may feel that the conditions perhaps that I've drafted go too far, maybe you think they don't go far enough. All of this is on the table. Ultimately, all of this is your decision to make for the final language of the decision. So as we go forward tonight, I'll be taking copious notes, so where you think we need to have some revisions to the draft, and topics that you want to discuss that maybe I didn't address in the draft as presented to you.
Okay.
Don't hesitate, because we do have a limited amount of time to conclude this process, and that goes until next Friday. Just by way of reminder for your standard of review, in a 40B process, what you're called on to consider is to weigh two factors. One is the regional need for affordable housing, and the other is whether there are local concerns that outweigh those needs. If you determine that the regional need for affordable housing is greater in weight than the local concerns, then in that situation, the board, by statute, is obligated to approve the project subject to the conditions that you feel are appropriate to mitigate local concerns, where you find that those outweigh the regional need for affordable housing. So that's really what we're here to do tonight, and for the last 6-7 months, however long it's been, is this kind of balancing act of those things. So that's kind of just a preamble, just as a reminder for what we're all here and have been doing.
Okay.
Just to confirm, the conditions you sent out on the 28th of August, they're the conditions that we're still basing tonight's discussion off of, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one comment.
Yes, sir.
On what Mr. Shermer said. Balancing, the regional need for affordable housing versus local concerns. In my mind, it's not exactly that simple. There's a regional need for housing, there are local concerns. We work for the locality, that's what we're here for. In my mind, it's the local concerns versus the likely outcome if we were to not approve this. I would think one way, if it were as simple as what you just said, regional needs versus local concern. Being practical, if there was a particular decision from this board not to allow this or not to approve this, I think that in all likelihood, it's going to go to the state, who's going to say it's approved and there are no conditions on it. And that's how I see it. That's just my own opinion. So just want the public to be aware of that, and I know the board's aware of it. But I think that it's a little bit more complex than that one simple, A versus B, where A is the regional need and B is the local concern. I think it's the local concern versus the likely outcome if we were to not approve, at least in my mind. Thank you.
I'm thinking there's a tremendous regional need. I mean, you hear from the state, the governor's office, how much housing units is going to be needed over the next decade. And one word that wasn't used was affordability. And there isn't a lot of affordable housing out there. And even at the 80% AMI, area median income for those who don't know, that's still a big number. That's still like an apartment like this, probably in the low $2,000 range, which is a lot for a family of 3 or 4. But I mean, there's not a lot of housing out there. I mean, if you're a young family, you're looking for an apartment locally, they're not there under $2,000. And that's why I think this is really needed. It's really paramount to Saugus that we get to that 10% number, so that we control some of the building and zoning that's going on. And this project, once approved, will put us over that number. And when this started, that's one of the first thing I heard out of the town manager's office, from selectmen, is we needed to reach that 10% number, because it gave the town a lot more control over what was going to be built out on Route 1 going forward.
But Mr. Chairman,
It's really,
the governor has stated, I believe the number is 200,000 units over the next 5 years. 200,000 units is a lot of units.
we have to do our small share, I guess.
Right, and the idea of 10% is probably going to change in the not-too-distant future and might become a higher number. I would also just mention that there's the potential for at least one other project to come forward, and it's already been filed, that we'll be seeing in the very near future, for a project that's even bigger than this one. So we're not finished with this by any means.
Can't count them,
I'm sorry?
can't count on it until it happens. That project's
It's already
been
been,
delayed.
already
Yeah,
been
but-
filed.
It's been delayed several years already, to that building.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I may, I just want to echo what Mr. Riley said. I think this evening is going to be the most critical evening that we've had thus far. I see three options, and I don't want to speak for anybody on the board, just my interpretation of it, and I may not even be voting on it. But I see three possible outcomes. Either we can deny the petitioner, we can approve them with conditions, or we can approve them without conditions. And I feel as though if we deny them, the state is going to approve them without the conditions that we are asking for. And those conditions, I think, are the most imperative to protect entities such as the Malden Anglers and the residents of Forestry. So I do think tonight we should definitely take our time and go through each condition and really consider this project. Essentially, I feel as though our hands are tied by the state and the administration's willingness for those 2,000 units Mr. Rossetti had mentioned.
200,000.
I'm sorry? 200,000, excuse me. So even worse of a number. So that's my thought process going in. And I just wanted to make that clear for everybody who's come out recently and mentioned that. I mean, you know, I do think it's going to impact Saugus, but I think the alternative is going to impact Saugus significantly more than if we don't essentially play ball and put logical and rational conditions on this project.
Okay. So before we get to the conditions, is there anything that anyone would like to discuss in regards to the decision? Or do you want to jump right into the conditions?
I'm good with the conditions, starting there.
Okay, want to jump right into the conditions? And we'll take them one at a time. All right. All right. Jesse, let's
I'm
keep
just
this
going to get into
informal.
to that part of the decision.
It's on page 13 I have, John.
Yep, it should hopefully that's paginated.
Yes, you can still put it on
Okay, that one.
if you need to. And, all right, the first condition, at least 25% of the dwelling units in the project shall remain affordable in perpetuity and shall be marketed to eligible households whose annual income may not exceed 80% of the year median income, adjusted for household size. And it goes on and more. I don't want to read every last word and keep us flying through. I want to fly a little bit through that.
Yeah,
I
maybe,
think that's an automatic almost, so we're going to do that.
if I may, Mr. Chair, and
Yeah.
excuse me for interrupting, a lot of these, I would say, these are boilerplate conditions, and I'm happy to kind of go through them pretty quickly for you, and then
If you
I've
could help me,
highlighted some.
if you could help me go through the boilerplate
Yeah,
ones and
yeah,
we'll jump
I
right through.
highlighted the ones, and I'll stop us when we get to them, the ones that I think are particularly important and
Okay.
particularly noteworthy for the board.
All right, thank you.
So on page 13 where we're at here, this section A, these are all regulatory conditions, and I would say these are really boilerplate for the most part.
Okay.
It has to do with the affordability requirements, the requirement for them to have a regulatory agreement. That creates the affordable housing restriction for the affordable units. The regulatory agreement will be signed. It's an agreement between the developer and the subsidizing agency, which here is Mass Housing. And then it outlines various requirements of that, which will be mandated by the subsidizing agency anyway, such as the units have to be indistinguishable from market rate units from the outside, they have to be interspersed throughout the project, the developer can't build them last, they have to build them in sequence with the market rate units. And essentially you have to be able, if you walk down the hall of these buildings, you won't know one's affordable and one's market rate. And that's required by the state, regardless of what the board does. So these essentially encompass those kind of requirements. If you look on page 14, the first one that I wanted to draw your attention to is condition number A9. And this is similar to a condition that was included in the Saugus Ridge comprehensive permit. And what this requires is, this is a separate regulatory agreement between the developer and the town. And the reason for this is if for any reason something happens with the subsidizing agency or the regulatory agreement with the subsidizing agency that would make that agreement unenforceable to ensure that these units are not affordable, then the town would have the ability to enforce those requirements and ensure that the units remain affordable for as long as that's permitted by law. So this condition requires the developer, and as currently drafted, it provides for within 90 days of issuance of this permit. The developer on this one has requested a modification of this, and my suggestion on this would be to change the timing so that it's in sequence with the regular regulatory agreement between the subsidizing agency and the developer. So essentially they'll be signing two agreements at the same time, one with the state, one with the town.
Okay.
Does that all make sense?
It does to me.
Okay.
Board in agreement with that?
There's a question, there's, in the second paragraph of 9A, there seems to go from condition 4 to condition 6 without condition 5. In the next to the last line is condition 6, I believe, and about 4 or 5 lines up is condition 4. I was just wondering if there's supposed to be a 5.
You're in the second paragraph of A9, Peter?
Second paragraph, A9, starting with the springing regulatory agreement.
Okay.
If you go down.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's missing a 5. That's,
Yeah.
thank you for catching that. I'll make that correction.
Okay, no big deal. So 6 should be 5? Or
Yes.
should there be something designated 5?
Yeah, 6 will become 5.
Okay.
So I'll make sure that that's corrected.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, my only question, and this is probably just out of my ignorance, is, so this is if the Affordable Housing Committee essentially dissolves or what have you, then the town can enforce the same guidelines.
It's not that the Housing Appeals Committee would be dissolved. If something were to happen that would make the regulatory agreement between the developer and Mass Housing unenforceable. So for example, if there were a mortgage on the property and the lender were to foreclose and the regulatory agreement was subordinate to that mortgage, the regulatory agreement would be wiped out as an inferior encumbrance on the property.
Okay.
And then the restriction would not be enforceable. In that situation, the springing regulatory agreement would come into effect when that happens, kind of as a backstop to make sure that the
No big
affordable
deal.
units stay affordable.
Okay.
Okay. So I believe everyone should understand that. Everyone understands that? Peter, any more questions?
Not on that, no.
Okay.
The next one that I wanted to highlight for you is A11. And just to point out, this provides for a local preference for the initial rent up of the project. The state does allow that to happen. The town will have to document there's a need for a local preference, and what this will allow for is that up to 70% of the affordable units will be rented when the building first leases up to local Saugus residents, and that's town of Saugus employees, people who live in town or who work for businesses in the town of Saugus.
Okay, question on that. Into the first paragraph on 11A, A11, it says employees of businesses located within the town of Saugus. So Target is located within the town of Saugus. If someone's an employee of Target, does it have to be the Saugus Target, or could it be any Target?
Good question. I would interpret it as the target in Saugus.
Okay, okay. And when it says businesses located in Saugus, you could have a business that could have multiple locations. If someone, I'm just trying to think of how to phrase this. If someone, for example, has their legal office in Saugus, okay? They may have a subsidiary office somewhere else. So is it primary business, or is it just,
I think where that employee is located.
Yeah.
That's what you want, like, let's say it was the secretary, if she was working out of the Saugus office, and that would
Yeah.
be fine. If, just because it has a Saugus branch, and it was in Braintree,
yeah?
that wouldn't fly, because she's not an employee working in Saugus, I would think, that's the way it works.
That's how it's intended.
That is?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So as a commercial to DiVirgilio with Rossetti Insurance,
Yeah,
your employees who work in the Lynn branch would not be eligible
right.
for the
Okay,
preference.
okay,
How's that for a commercial?
that would work.
Hypothetically speaking.
The next one, Mr. Chair, to call your attention to is A number 16. This is another one where the developer has requested a slight modification because the language refers to both annually and upon request by the town. So I'll modify this to make it make sense so that they're not conflicting language for these two provisions here. That's essentially the end of the regulatory conditions. The other ones are fairly straightforward. And then we get into section B, which are general conditions that pertain to the project itself. These, you'll see it starts at B1, very fundamental conditions that pertain to the number of units, the unit mix that's been proposed by the developer, the height of the buildings, lot coverage, dimensional requirements, and it specifies that the project has to be built as they propose it to be built, can't be taller, can't be bigger, or more units than they proposed. There is a process for the developer after the board's review is complete to notify the board and request approval of substantial or insubstantial changes. And just fair warning, it's fairly common for projects to come back to boards for notice of project changes.
We had a number of them on the ridge.
Yeah,
Right. So you'll be seeing these developers again, most likely,
Okay.
as the project moves forward. The first one of these that I wanted to call your attention to, it's two of them actually, it's B6 and B7. The developer has objected to this as conditions. These refer to what are known as blanket waivers or plan waivers. And what that means is, in certain situations, a developer will request a blanket waiver of all requirements of a bylaw. And when we get into the waivers, there are some instances of that where the developer has requested blanket waivers. There's also instances where they've requested plan waivers, and that is a situation where they say, approve the plans as shown without specifying the relief that they specifically need. So for example, if they were to say, approve the building height as shown on the plans without specifying what the height is, that would be a height plan waiver. So what I've specified here is that the board is not granting either plan waivers or blanket waivers. So if it's not specified in their request for relief, they're not being granted relief. And that would require them to come back if they have further changes that are not specified in the waiver list and notify the board at a subsequent date.
Mr. Chair, are there any specific that come to mind off the top of your head right now, or is this just a future proven method?
In terms of what has been requested for this project?
Correct.
There are some, and they're highlighted in the waiver list.
Okay,
So maybe when we go through the waiver list, we'll touch on that, and I'll highlight them for you.
thank you.
If that's clear for everyone, the next one that I wanted to move to, and again, if there's any of these between, not to skip ahead too fast, if there's any of these that board members want to talk about specifically, just stop me. But the next one that I wanted to highlight would be number 12. And what this condition has to do with is peer review of subsequent filings by the developer. So after the board's review is complete, they'll have to advance their plans to construction documents, which are the final detailed plans that are needed for construction permits, building permits, sewer connections, and whatnot. The board has the right to require those to be peer reviewed. There'll be code compliance review to confirm that they're compliant with all the fire code, building code, as well as the conditions of this permit. So that's something that the board, you'll not be required to do that yourself unless you choose to do that. You'll be able to delegate that to a peer reviewer of your choosing, and that will be funded by the developer. That's what this condition requires. So that's for the protection of the town, to make sure that the project, as it actually gets built, is consistent both with the law and what this board has required in this decision. Relative to that, the next few conditions talk about a procedure for how that process plays out. On B number 14, the developer has requested a slight modification to this and clarification about the cure period. I was going to make a slight revision to this to respond to their request to it. It would have to do with a reasonable time period to cure that, rather than 30 days, which is, they objected because that's a very brief window of time, and I agree with that. So we'll modify that, and that'll be in the next draft for the board.
What would you be modifying it to?
So it'll,
60 or 120 or?
what I would suggest is just leave it as a reasonable period of time, because it's not, it'll be a moving target essentially at that point, because they'll be applying for multiple permits, they'll be potentially still involved with the state, with MassDOT. So reasonable time period is what they proposed, and I think that's a reasonable request.
Okay.
The next set of conditions, we're still within B, but they start to be broken down into specific topics, and the next ones have to do with water, sewer, and utilities. The next ones to highlight are B 20 through 22. The developer has suggested that the references to the town engineer, the parenthetical here, be deleted. That was included in the draft because these were conditions that were requested by the town engineer. So I don't think that there's a need for any change here, but defer to the board as to your preference.
Want to discuss that? So you're saying that you want to keep the town engineer in play, and the developer doesn't think it's necessary?
There's no difference in the requirement. It just specifies that where the source of the condition is.
Okay, the only thing that could be an issue, Saugus has been known to, at times, not have a town engineer, in which case they either bring in potentially a part-time or just go without one for a period of time.
Repair surfaces,
Yeah, Todd,
a number of times.
yeah.
These ones did come from Tom. That's
Okay.
where these are from.
Okay.
I tend to think the engineer language should stay in.
I think it should be, there should be something saying a town employee should be involved, but I don't know if it should be the town engineer, maybe the head of Department of Public Works or something like that. I believe he's an engineer and
So
he's.
you're thinking it should be town engineer and/or the head of the Department of Public Works with that?
Maybe or equivalent,
Sure, town engineer or equivalent.
but my question is, does town engineer just denote who proposed the condition and
Yeah,
not
that's
who?
all.
So it's not actually who is reported to?
Nope.
So the verbiage is just semantics at this point, I feel as though. It's not somebody overseeing that condition, correct? Because I know there's some that were recommended by the fire department and fire chief, and they
Correct.
don't specify them, like the
Right.
fire chief. So, I mean, I think
Some of them
it-
do.
for consistency, maybe it should just be uniform throughout, whether they all have the party that brought the condition forward, or they all do not.
Getting off, still thinking that the language should say in there that I don't think Mr. Baldwin would have recommended it if he didn't think it was required.
Well, if you look at B34, just for example, that one, the fire chief for review and approval.
Well, let's stay
So it-
focused on 20 to 22.
Yeah, but if
Right
you're
now.
saying that it should be, it shouldn't necessarily be a town engineer, it should be the town engineer. I
So,
mean, we're kind of getting semantics, I guess.
yeah, I think the parenthetical, just as Jesse confirmed, denotes who actually recommended the article, not who has oversight of the condition, not who has oversight of the condition. So it's kind of like, you know, this condition is brought forth by Mr. Rossetti. I think the topic's mute, right? Like, it bears no,
Yeah,
either way.
if it's confusing in any way, then I would say, let's delete it, but it's not imposing a requirement that it just says town engineer. It's not who it reports to, it's not who oversees it. You're the board with jurisdiction to enforce these. It's just who requested the condition, that's it, nothing more.
All right, then I don't see any problem with just having it the way it is.
Okay.
All right, want to move on from that?
The next one to highlight is B29. This one was objected to by the developer as well. They had requested a change so that the town's infiltration and inflow policy be referred to as of the application date. For this one, what I would suggest is let me interface with Todd and get his view on this condition and whether it should refer to the application date or the policy in effect as of whenever they build the project. And just by way of background, infiltration and inflow, in case that term is not familiar to any of you, that's a requirement of the state, or the town's NIPI's permit, which requires that the town impose a stormwater management bylaw that provides for removal of infiltration and inflow. And that's things like holes in sewer pipes, that's, you know, Johnny Q neighbor has a sump pump attached to the sewer system, things like that, which are not supposed to be dumped into the sanitary sewer. And that's a fund that the town creates, and it's associated with all new projects, residential projects, that applies fees based on the number of units and the Title V flows that are associated with those units. And that money is paid by developers into the fund, and the town uses that to remove infiltration and inflow from the sewer system.
Okay.
So for this one, my suggestion is we put a pin in that and we'll report back at the next hearing after
All
I
right.
talk to Todd.
That's fine with everybody?
I would agree that it should be as of the date of the project, not the
Well,
application
we'll
date.
let Jesse confirm,
Yeah,
talk with Todd, though, right?
yeah.
And see if he agrees with that. We'll discuss it, we'll bring it up again.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, the next condition that I want to highlight for you is B31. This was objected to by the developer. It provides for both buildings to be wired to be solar ready for the installation of photovoltaic panels on the roof. So essentially what this means is they haven't proposed to build solar panels on the roof, but the condition requires them to install wiring in the building so that if or when they do propose to add solar panels to the roof, the wiring is already there in order for them to do that.
Okay.
and they object to that?
They do.
What's the extra cost?
So, Mr. Chairman, I believe
Yeah.
the Massachusetts Building Code is very in favor of specifically the Energy Conservation Code. It's going to be a much more comprehensive than this, and I think as long as they abide by the Massachusetts Building Code, there are provisions in there for futuring for solar, for EV vehicles, things of that nature. I think this is kind of a shot at the dark in it, and we should leave it up to the building code in that case.
Okay,
Okay, so
I'll go along with that.
for that one, just to spitball modification of the condition,
Yeah,
would you think it would be appropriate to say, if required by the applicable energy code at the time of construction or something like that?
Yeah, so the IECC is the handler of that. And they will usually specify things like EV chargers and satellite and future and things of that nature. So I would probably say as long as they're abiding by the building code.
Okay.
right,
Okay.
next,
And
the,
just to,
yes,
B30, there's no intention of doing any kind of cell towers or anything like that, right?
It's not being proposed,
Okay.
no.
And when it says advertisement, can they put a banner saying apartments for rent, or is it commercial advertisement?
Well, this is just the project building. There's a condition later in the decision that talks about the sign for the project. They have proposed a freestanding sign down on Route 1.
That I'm aware, yeah, so I know some apartment buildings will have the freestanding sign down on Route 1, but then potentially either one of these properties could do like a soft banner saying, you know, now leasing, call.
that would still have to be approved by
Okay,
separately.
But if it were to-
Just put on the banner.
If it were to go on the building though, like this condition says, it would be in conflict.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is kind of intended that the building looks like it does as shown in the renderings. There's no signs on the renderings. It's
Yeah.
just it's a nicely architecture designed building, you know, and this is essentially, this is going to become one of the tallest, most noticeable structures in the entire town of Saugus. So this helps to make sure that when you come down the hill, you're not looking at, hopefully you're looking at a building that overlooks the not quite so nice looking Palumbo property sign on the building down below. Let's just say that.
how has the board dealt with that before? Because did Essex Landing have something similar that said like apartments for rent with the phone number, or
But
like should that?
I believe Essex Landing's reader board out front was a grandfathered reader board
Okay,
that was there from the miniature golf place.
all right, fair enough.
But
It never turned down. Do you think so, Peter?
Yeah.
I really do. I think that's what that was.
Okay,
that's a different topic though. This condition says on the roof or the sides of the building itself. It doesn't say anything about freestanding signs. So this says there's no signs on top of or on the sides of the building. Oh, that's it.
Yep. And they have requested to put a sign on Route 1, and there's a condition that discusses that.
Okay.
So the next set of conditions, the next heading is police, fire, and emergency medical conditions. I don't have any of these that I wanted to highlight for the board members. They're fairly standard. They discuss building code, fire code, NFPA requirements, fire chief. Just go ahead.
Can we go back to the B38? It says you can't use sodium-based chemicals and,
That's ahead, Peter, not behind.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
Yep, that's the next section, that's
That's the next
environmental, so that's,
Oh,
unless somebody has
environmental.
anything on,
Okay.
Jesse just mentioned the police and fire emergency. There was nothing in there. You're
Okay,
in the next section.
okay, sorry about
do
that.
have
all right.
something on 37.
okay.
So, it says B37 only of organic fertilizers and pesticides. That's actually contradictory to C22, which is ahead of us. So maybe we'll get to C22 and revert back to that.
Okay,
Because that also speaks about pesticides and commercial fertilizers, but doesn't have the organic. And I think that would be important to incorporate to protect the Malden anglers. So just consistency between C22 and
B37.
B37.
Okay, so we'll talk about that. I take it you want the language organic from B37?
Yeah, where there may be impact to the anglers, I think that we need to specify organic,
Okay,
or at least consistency between the two, so it doesn't leave room for interpretation.
so I think we're up to 38, Peter.
Yeah, 38, in that third line, granted only where reasonably necessary. Any idea who's gonna determine that?
The building commissioner.
Building commissioner? Okay.
I have a couple notes on that too, actually.
Okay.
I don't know if the building commissioner would be the right person. I would probably defer to DPW, the head of the DPW, because in the middle of a storm, if there's a calcium shortage, which there have been in the past, the building commissioner may not be reachable, and it may pose public safety, where the DPW director would probably be working since it's a storm. And then also a time frame too, because, what's that?
It's not our DPW director. He works 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You
Well,
wouldn't find him out.
my concern is at 2 in the morning, if they can't source calcium chloride and they're trying to make the property safe for the morning,
Mr. Cogliano, you agree with me?
they would need more, they need a more immediate answer if they can't treat with salt. And maybe within a specific time frame, if they don't get an answer from the town through that channel, they're able to do so, again, just for public safety.
So maybe you're talking about emergency situations.
Correct.
And/or situations where they can't reach the DPW director or building commissioner. So perhaps add a language here after the word except in an emergency and/or with the express permission of the DPW director. So that would allow.
I mean, apparently the DPW director may not be the person either, it's just, I would put like a specific time frame. So if they email the DPW director or make some type of communication, documented communication, and they don't get an answer back within 2 hours or 4 hours or what have you, whatever the board seems fit, they can go to salt if they can't source the calcium.
Okay, that, I can write that up and have proposals in the
I've
next.
dealt with that in instances where we have a contract for calcium and we weren't able to source it for whatever reasons, and we had to switch to salt, so it becomes a public safety issue.
How common is that?
It happened about 2 years ago. Most vendors, I mean, they were selling it for like triple the price because people were price gouging and things like that, third party, so it has happened.
What about the idea of just saying public safety, meaning police or fire? If they determine that it's, because at least they're working. You know,
If the
when-
fire department deems that it's a public safety issue.
So you want the permission to be the fire department or?
Public safety,
Public safety?
yeah, it could be police or fire.
I'm just thinking of somebody that's gonna be there at 3 in the morning before residents start shuffling out at 5, 6 a.m. to go to work. Most salt apps happen over the course of the evening.
Okay, I think I have it, what you're suggesting. Let me,
I'll leave the verbiage completely up to you, it's just
Yeah.
a thought.
I'll draft some revised language and next time we're together, we can go through that. Hopefully it's,
Someone goes off the road up
Yeah,
there,
get it.
most likely they're gonna call the police,
yep.
Yeah.
you know?
So what's next on the,
Next one on my agenda is B45. This is one that the developer has objected to. It is proposed to include a condition that both buildings be non-smoking.
I don't have an issue with that, because I I have no problem disclosing that. I live at the Ridge, which is now called Atwood. Those are non-smoking buildings. I've never seen any issue there, I've never seen anyone smoke, I don't smell the smoke from cigarettes or whatever, so I think it's pretty, in the marketplace today, I think non-smoking is the way it is. And I have no problem saying the project building should be non-smoking. I think it's probably even a safety issue. People, smoking in bed is always an issue in any home fire. And I think having non-smoking buildings makes the buildings a lot safer also, not just the use of tobacco or whatever. Any other comments?
Yeah, being an ex-smoker for 25-plus years, I kind of agree with that, but I do have a question, is non-smoking also non-vaping?
It's up to you, we can include that language.
Okay. If you're gonna make it non-smoking, I think you should.
Are there any legal parameters that dictate, like, is that an invasion of people's privacy if they're smoking within their own homes? Like, I'm in favor, I'm not a fan of people smoking, especially in like the public hallways, but do we have a right to impose that on somebody's living quarters?
Well, that's something that's, for the tenant, it's between the landlord and the tenant. So the condition would require that the landlord impose that as a requirement. So I didn't know that the Saugus Ridge was non-smoking, but that's something that I assume is in all of the leases.
And what's kind of an oddity is, when I first moved in there, it's just the fact I see all these people sitting in their cars. What are they doing in their cars? Well, they go to their car and have a cigarette. Because they couldn't tell you couldn't smoke in your car.
That's right.
I mean, there is a number of feet, I don't know what it is, because I don't smoke, but from the building that you can't smoke at. I think it might even be off grounds. I've never seen anyone anywhere on the grounds with a cigarette, other than sitting in a car.
I'm perfectly fine with the no smoking, I just didn't know if it was legal, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I think it is.
Okay.
Or whatever you want.
But we're back to the,
You know,
do we put in language for non-vaping too? I mean, I don't think, I'm not for vaping, but I don't think it imposes a health threat on, like, secondhand smoke.
I'd question that.
Okay. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'd prefer to see it in.
I can add that.
Yeah, we'll add, any objection to adding it? Then why don't we add in the no vaping either? I don't think it'll be an issue with the developer. If it is, they can come back and discuss it with you, and you can discuss it with us.
Okay.
All right, what's next? We're on,
So the next ones, we're getting into the issue of parking and traffic. And these we're gonna wanna discuss, to get a sense of what direction the board wants to go in on the issue of parking specifically.
if I can address that, even my thought process, I've seen over several months, like, the parking almost being a moving target. We're gonna do it this way, we're gonna do it that way, we're gonna do this. And I'm hearing a lot of alternatives, some things that are positive from the developer. I'm hearing things like they might, the school bus company upstairs might be leaving and going someplace else that would add spots. Totally confused when they talk about, well, we have, the office building, certain hours are in there, and then the residents would be in there certain hours. That's just all confusing. I almost wanted to just simplify the parking situation, that X amount of spaces are needed prior to occupancy, permit being issued by the town. The developer will show the building commission that X amount of spaces have been provided, and leave it at that. Simplify the parking thing. I know I'm almost making it too simple, but it's a moving target. I honestly believe the plan might be there that works today, But a year from now, when they really start building, 2 years when this is complete or whatever, it might be completely different. Doesn't mean it might not still conform, it's gonna have to, but it might change. So I'd like to leave it kind of open to saying, and I don't know what the exact numbers, I don't remember what the exact number of spaces were that are required, but that a parking plan be provided that provides that X amount of spaces, and that parking plan prior to occupancy is approved by the building commissioner. And just let the developer do their job, and let the commission do their job on the parking plan, because it's just, I think it's blown all our mind. We've all come up with things, being confused about the parking situation, and it's more than it needs to be. It doesn't have to be as confusing as it's been portrayed to us. You need so many spaces, and the developer will provide those. I just want to simplify it as much as, get the legalese and the engineering words out of it, and put something in there that the layman will understand. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, we spent a lot of time on this
I know.
over several months. And I think only at our last meeting, we've come to some conclusion that's agreeable among all parties. I would be hesitant to now say, okay, let's scratch that and just pick a number, and the developer will figure it out and hand off the responsibility.
Although the building commissioner
And hand
will
off the
sign off on a parking plan.
But we've already agreed on a parking plan. We've already spent considerable time and effort to do that.
Right?
I'm not sure why we would hand it to the building commissioner.
Didn't we add those spaces on the driveway?
I think they were to be built if
If
the police
required.
department required them. I mean, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that it has been a very convoluted process with the bylaw interpretation. Personally, I'm just falling back on the peer review that we hired, and them saying that they felt it was adequate to.
From the beginning.
Yeah. So I think, as Mr. Riley said, we've reached a mutually beneficial conclusion for both the developer, the board, and the community. I think we should stick to that and honor that.
Have we reached that?
I think the last meeting.
We did it at our last meeting.
I don't,
Is that reflected in the conditions?
I think so. So maybe I can walk through what these conditions require to make sure we're all on the same page about this. So as proposed, the project has 170 parking spaces on the site. They are also proposing to have parking in the shared parking structure on the office parcel next door. So if you look at condition number B54, what that provides, that has a count of the number of spaces that are available in the garage as represented by the developer, and the number of spaces that are committed to other uses. So they've represented that there are 125 spaces that are dedicated to the hotel by a private agreement, that those cannot be used for the project, and they've also represented that the office use, which is fully occupied and leased, needs 165 parking spaces. So going through the very convoluted calculation of how many spaces are remaining and how many are needed for the various uses, there are 49 spaces that are not needed for the office and not dedicated to the hotel. So in the first paragraph of B54 there, what I have included is that the parking structure can be used for no more than 82 spaces. And where that number comes from is, 49 is 60% of 82 spaces, and 60% is the amount of parking that's required for the project during the heaviest parking requirement time period of day or week. So that's the maximum period of time when they have to have 100% of their office parking, 60% of their apartment parking, and that would equate to 82 spaces in the garage. So that would bring them, if they're allowed to use those 82 spaces plus 170, that gets them up to 252 spaces. The zoning requirements for the apartment number and mix that they proposed is 316 spaces. The testimony from your peer reviewer was that the parking number of spaces is sufficient. The developer has also indicated that there may be some ability to add more spaces on the site. So I think it's really just for the board to decide, is 252 enough? Is that the magic number or are more needed?
And the 252 was confirmed by our peer review to be adequate.
His view was yes, it was. His concern was more to do with the management of the parking spaces in the garage.
And then I also didn't see, I think there were like 40-something or 30-something that they were gonna address on the boulevard as needed, based on the recommendation of the police department.
That's my recollection as well.
Should that be added to this condition?
So yes, we can add that. If you go to condition B55, that is left a blank there for the board to decide. If your view is that more parking spaces are needed, then you can essentially fill that in there with the number of spaces that you need, that you feel are needed for the project to be added.
I think we're gonna leave that up to the police department and like tickets issued per our last meeting, correct? We're gonna use that as a basis, or did I misunderstand that?
That was what we discussed at the last meeting, and it was agreed to by the applicant. I don't recall an exact number, at least off the top of my head, but
I think it's 39.
39.
That's the number. There's also a concept that you may be familiar with, the idea of a quote land bank of parking, and that provides for the parking wouldn't be built when the project is initially constructed unless there's a need for it to be built. And that saves the need for additional pavement if it's not needed, over parking if it's not needed, and frankly it discourages some of the residents from having multiple vehicles. So that's an option that's open to the board as well.
Yeah, I like the notion and the condition we were discussing just a minute ago. I think it's number B54. I like the notion here of having specific numbers here. These are enforceable. These are something that the building commissioner can enforce once the space is built. Just going back to prior projects that don't need to be named, there's been discussion that we were sort of promised one thing, but another thing was delivered. Well, we have exact specific numbers here, and when the building commissioner goes here to inspect this one day, those spots will or will not be there, and it'll not be up for debate. They'll be present or they'll not be present, and he can pass it or not. I like the idea of having exact numbers here. And I like the idea of having the 39 in the next condition for the police department to ask for, should it be necessary, in their judgment.
I guess my only question would be, because we've discussed numerous numbers, are these the numbers that the petitioner also agreed on last meeting? I want to make sure that they are on the same page as we are.
Okay.
So I don't know, Mr. Chair, through you, if Jesse can confirm the numbers with the petitioner and get a yes or no answer.
Yeah. Yes.
39?
Well, the total number of parking spots as well, based on the calculations, because I know there was some, actually, 2 or 3 different interpretations of the algorithm used to calculate the parking spots.
Yeah.
So long as B54 is agreed upon by the petitioner, then I think we're okay.
Okay. That's a more complicated question, so I'll interface with them probably tomorrow.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm agreeing to what we, or the board is agreeing to what we agreed on in the last meeting, and that both parties are okay with that.
Do you want me, for revising condition 55, do you want to discuss a land bank, or do you want to include that, or just to leave it more general if required by the police commissioner?
I would say leave it more general.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd agree.
I would agree.
I don't think we need to specify the how, just the what.
And so who do you want to have the person to make that call?
Police.
Yeah, we agreed it would be police last time.
Okay. So with that, if we're ready to move on to the next conditions, and I don't want to rush anybody because I know the parking has been a big issue for this project. Related, in number 56, the developer has objected to a portion of that condition, specifically the second sentence, which requires that all indoor and guest parking areas be wired with conduit to be EV ready. So that requires them, when they build the project, they put conduit in the ground or under the surface of the garage, that if in the future they decide they want to wire those to be EV charging stations, that the wiring is ready. And that's similar to the rooftop being solar ready, essentially. So consistent with that, if you would like me to revise that to specify if required by the energy code or similar language, I can certainly do that.
Yeah, it would seem that that would be maybe overkill, because if you're gonna wire all the spaces, all 329 or 39, whatever it is, who knows what's gonna happen with electric vehicles in the near future. And it may be overkill if you have to wire the spaces for it, so that could be a significant expense.
Again, I battle with the energy code on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
and the IECC is more than, so it's the IECC plus Massachusetts adopted their own energy code, the stretch energy code, and they have provisions in that code specifically for EV chargers, for solar panels, any type of alternative energy. I would just defer to that.
Okay, I'll revise that.
It is very comprehensive and thorough, so I think that could set guidelines better than the board could.
The next one to highlight is B58, and that pertains to the parking management plan. That's something that the developer is committed to providing. And that will specify how the shared parking situation is going to be managed. And I believe this condition was recommended by your traffic peer reviewer. Just wanted to highlight for you that that's in there, that they will have to provide a comprehensive parking management plan to explain how they'll manage it. The next one, 59, that's the condition.
Can I interrupt you for a
Oh,
second?
sure.
Who gets final approval of that?
It'll be filed when they file building permits, but we can specify that further.
Do you think we need to? I think the building commissioner is capable of determining that. I was just curious because it didn't specify, so I didn't know what road it was going. So
That's another question, will the Saugus Inspectional Services be handling these permits?
Say again?
Will it be Saugus Inspectional Service?
Depends on the permit. For building permits, yes, it will be.
Okay. I don't know if we did a third-party source in some of these larger projects.
I don't
No,
know.
okay.
I'm gonna make a note on this one to consider some language referring to it being filed with the building commissioner, if that's who you think is the most appropriate party, the parking management plan.
either that or the police chief. I
I
don't,
think the police would probably be better, they tend to get the complaints. So
I think yeah.
So who are we filing it with?
Excuse me just for a moment, the library's closed now, so if anyone's leaving, make sure you go out the side door, out this door right here, and then out the side door. Can't go into the library. Go in.
Let me turn the Wi-Fi off. I don't know if you know, I just lost my connection.
Oh, I did too.
Oh, did you?
You went in very quickly.
And then shut off here.
Connect to your phone.
someone want to mention it to the library staff?
Um,
we tell them?
Yeah.
If they're still
The
there.
Wi-Fi one. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt, but.
No, it's okay.
No, thank you.
Didn't they shut their Wi-Fi down at the end of the day?
They're gone.
They're gone.
You gonna turn it back on?
They're gone.
Gone.
They're all going.
Already then.
Oh, but you know they're on the 801.
So the police chief, I think, or the police department to handle the parking plan?
I think they'd have probably more experience than the building commissioner.
So I'll revise that, and that'll be in the next draft for you to approve. There aren't any more conditions in that section that I wanted to highlight for the board, but if there's anything you want to talk about.
Do you want a copy, just is your computer using? You can use your computer, you don't need a hard copy?
No, I'm good.
It looks like it came back. Just weird.
I have an extra hard copy if somebody needs one.
I've got it offline. I'm not, don't need internet. to be
Okay.
honest.
Okay.
I do have a couple notes on B67.
Okay.
The security camera system that monitors the property 24/7.
That was a condition requested by Chief Cordelli.
I guess the only question will be how long do they have to retain the video for?
He didn't specify in his requested condition, but we can include language about that.
Would that, I mean, is that fair to the petitioner though, because we didn't essentially negotiate that going
We
forward?
can ask the police chief how long he wants it kept on.
Okay,
Can
Don't we do that?
Without that, it's kind of meaningless, so.
all right.
Yeah, we'll ask the police chief how long he says 48 hours, 72 hours, or,
That's fair.
I'll make a note of that.
okay.
Okay.
Before we move on, I did want to point out on B65, this was one that the developer had raised some concerns about, specifically the references to unshielded point sources of light that are visible from public ways or adjacent properties. This language, it comes from the Saugus Ridge decision, and the concern that the developer had expressed about it is, I think, a reasonable one, because essentially, if read in the right way, this condition would essentially say that you can't see a light source from Route 1, which for any property that's at a grade higher than Route 1 is almost impossible. So this is how the bylaw is drafted. My view is that the planning board has approved numerous projects in this district. The lights are visible from Route 1. They have to be shielded, they have to be dark sky compliant. That's both of which are being proposed by the developer. So my view is that the project complies with the requirement as it's stated. There are waiver decisions that make that specific finding, that say the project complies, and I think that clears up any confusion about the unshielded point sources, because they are essentially shielded, but they will be visible from certain angles. So leave that to the board to decide how you want to address that.
Wait,
Okay.
no way that you said to address it.
It sounds like
Oh, you'll leave on
the
that.
best reasonable approach, right?
Okay. Going back to 60 and 61. Is it 60? Yeah, 60 is the school bus stop with the school department and DOT. Shouldn't the police be involved in that?
I can add that. That condition, I think that came from the traffic peer reviewer, but we can add
Okay.
police chief if you'd like,
Yeah.
Who's the governing authority and where that goes?
mascot.
Okay, and then in 61, Reasonable best efforts to obtain an MBTA stop. I remember when Walmart went in, it took several years to get a bus stop there. And it was, there was some issues with it. So I'm just questioning the idea of reasonable best efforts. You know, it could be something that's gonna be years in the making.
That one, that's, again, that's up to the board. This is not one that the developer
How else
has
do you
objected
word
to me.
All they can do is their best efforts. They can control the MBTA.
No, I agree. But one of the points about this whole development is that supposedly people will be using public transportation. So if part of the concept of having this location is that it will have public transportation available, if the transportation isn't available, it kind of plays against it.
I don't know what you want.
So if
How
you're
else you
speaking in
word it?
regards to the MBTA overlay, I think that,
What else, other than putting reasonable effort to get a bus stop here, what else do they do?
That's a problem.
I don't know what else they can do other
Yeah.
than make that effort.
Okay.
Would they be stopping on Route 1 if they had a bus stop?
That's, well, no, they can't be on Route 1 per se.
So,
Where's the stop at Walmart? Do they go into Walmart?
They go into
Yeah.
Into the parking lot?
into the parking lot.
Okay,
okay.
because I haven't seen the.
Yeah, when
I
it
go
comes
in there
out,
every day, I haven't
it
seen
has to go out into the second lane,
I haven't seen a
bus there.
bus in there, and
Yeah, 'cause
certainly,
it only
certainly
comes
there's
every
no-
couple of hours.
there's no bus going up the hill to the ridge.
Yeah,
So it's on, you know,
Peter, are you concerned because of the overlay district to abide by that, or just
well,
because
that's
it's a
part of it, yeah. I think,
but I don't know what else more than that language they can do.
okay,
They can't make the MBTA, you know what it said.
no.
We can't make the MBTA do anything, we certainly know that.
MBTA bus lane sites.
So as
All within
drafted,
reasonable walking distance. So if there was something on, say, Main Street, you know, at, whatever, the VFW,
That's the Oaklandville.
huh?
Oaklandville, it's a bus stop.
Okay, so there's a bus stop.
Is there one
Okay,
stop and
that's
shop
fine,
too?
Yep.
okay.
So they would have to
Shop as
walk
well.
down?
The what?
They would have to walk from the
Yeah,
apartment building down?
yeah,
I'm not sure how much I buy the notion of a lot of public transit here anyway.
Yeah.
Well, on Route 1, on Big Hill, there's not much within walking distance.
yeah.
I don't think Saugus utilizes public transport as much as other municipalities anyway, so.
All right.
If you've been
Well,
to the
if
ridge
there is a bus
and
stop
tried to
at
walk out from
the
Route 1, you
Oaklandville
might have a
School,
heart
that's
attack
fine.
before you got to the top.
That's what I'm saying. People here have cars.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
So leave it as it is,
Yeah,
not much more they can do.
yeah.
All right? Where were we, Jesse?
We're up to,
65.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, we got to 67, yeah.
I had a note on 72.
Go ahead.
So where it says it should install a fence and signage to prevent project residents, I'd say specify a distance on the signage, so maybe every 75 feet or 50 feet, so it's not one sign for every facade, or every property boundary. And then maybe if the board thinks it's important, since access to Forest Street has been such a big issue, put something to specify non-climbable or climb-resistant fencing. So not just like chain link, but like a mini mesh or a solid fence so that people aren't. What's that? Oh, sorry.
I've always criticized the barbed wire, so I don't wanna go too far.
I think that they're proposing solid wood at this point,
Yeah,
so that would, is that sufficiently non-climbable?
Yeah, no, absolutely. My concern was more chain link, something that
Yep.
you
was,
could stick a toe.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I would like to see maybe every 75 foot, a sign that says
No trespassing.
no trespassing and no access to Forest Street.
Uh,
And maybe,
Or the Malden angles, no, just no access beyond this point,
yeah,
or
something,
something, doesn't have to mention Forest Street or the angles, just like no trespassing
correct.
on the side of the.
Which I think the condition addresses, the only thing it doesn't address is the distance between signs, just so that they don't put one sign for 300 feet and expect that to suffice. So maybe every 75 or 100 foot, repeat the sign.
I would go with 75.
Okay.
Does the board agree?
Sure.
Sign every 75 feet?
Yeah. So we put flashing lights.
You're not gonna be able to see it from this one.
The previous condition, just to go back one, to B71, that's for the protection of the concern of some of the neighbors, that the project site would be open to vehicle access to Forest Street through the adjacent property. Can't remember the street address of the parcel that's owned by Mr. Colombo on Forest Street. 71 prohibits that and specifies that there's no access by automobiles, bicycles, other vehicles, pedestrians, pets, whatnot. You're not going to Forest Street from the
Not
property.
even a walkway, nothing.
Right.
That's 72 is the angles. That's what we're talking
I think it can be tied to either, the signage can be tied to either one.
Of,
Yeah.
okay. If we're good on that condition, there's a couple of pages until I have another one
Okay.
to bring to the board's attention. And so the next one I had was C16 and 17. And that has to do
Let
with,
me ask Peter, do you have anything in between that, maybe highlighted? He wants to go all the way to 317.
Lots highlighted, but no questions.
Okay. Mr. Federico, you're also,
Just on 17, 18, or 17 specifically.
C17,
Yeah.
well, that's what he's talking about
Yep.
going to.
So I'm good up until.
Before that,
No,
you're all set, okay, so we're jumping forward to C17?
C16, just
C16,
quickly
sorry.
to highlight that one. So that starts to get into the blasting conditions. This is partially based on a condition from Saugus Ridge and partially based on the recommendation of the civil peer reviewer. And it pertains to the state requirements for the blasting plan, and those are specified there. That's overseen by the fire department. That's a separate permit that the developer will have to get from the fire department. It's not under the board's purview to grant that or to grant you relief for it, so that's something we'll have to do separately. To note, in this condition, there was a commitment by the developer and an agreement to do the pre-blast surveys for properties within 500 feet. They did want to specify that that's residential properties within 500
Right.
feet, so we'll add that note.
Sorry, Jesse, I think it was single-family residential.
That's fine. That's all I had on that condition. The next one, C17, that was a condition that the developer has objected to. It provides that there's no rock crushing operations that are to be done on site, except for the purpose of breaking up large pieces of ledge that can't fit into a loading truck, essentially, to be hauled off the site. The objection that the developer has raised on this is essentially it comes down to this is a trade-off because they're planning on blasting material on site. They're going to reuse some of that on the site, and in order to do that, they'll have to potentially crush it on site. So do you want rock crushing, or do you want more trucks coming from the site to haul material? So I'll leave that up to the board to decide.
Mr. Chairman, that's actually my notes as well. So the petitioner did mention that they were gonna repurpose the material to infill other parts of the property. So my thought process on that is, why send one truck of solid rock out and bring one truck of crushed stone back when it can be done on site, as opposed to having that traffic on Route 1? I'd actually recommend permitting the rock crushing, but maybe putting a restriction on there preventing the sale after the tonnage used, so that it doesn't become a destination spot for other contractors to purchase material out of, as like Walmart did. But I do think that they should permit the rock crushing, because it's gonna alleviate traffic onto Route 1, it's gonna be more efficient, and it's also gonna be more green and environmentally friendly than trucking in and out.
Okay,
Yeah, when we did the Hilltop and used that as a snow farm, the number of trucks going up and down Route 1 was phenomenal. It was basically a solid line of trucks coming out of Boston and looping around to the Fells Way and then going back into Boston. At any given time, there were hundreds of trucks lined up. And at one point, the height of the snow in the parking lot was well above the height of the sign, the Hilltop sign. So it does make sense to do that. The only thing that would be a concern might be the hours of operation if you're gonna do a rock crushing operation.
I think so too. I think it can be very loud.
So
Am I correct?
you'd have to limit it to, say, 9 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon or something like that.
Yeah, because it gets loud and I think it'd be a nuisance in the
Yeah.
neighborhood.
I would
Exactly.
definitely recommend putting hours on it.
So 9 to 4, Monday through Friday?
Yeah, definitely no weekend crushing, 9 to 4, I think would be sufficient. It will get loud, but positioned on the site correctly, I think it'll reduce noise to the abutters.
Okay.
But it's definitely gonna be less impactful overall than having the vehicles in and out of the job site, and
Agreed.
less debris on the road too, from tracking material out.
Yeah, when we did Walmart and some of the other projects over there, it necessitated having truck washing and doing things to limit the amount of debris that was being moved onto Route 1. So they had to bring in sweeper trucks and things like that to clean up the highway.
So usually the Mass DOT will put a plan in with the developer, in my experience. They'll put riprap, which is 3-inch crushed stone or equivalent, that will scrape the tires as they exit. Their petitioner also mentioned they were entertaining the idea of a truck wash station. I guess my main concern would be, again, the sale of material above what they use. I have no problem with them crushing stone for on-site, but crushing stone and then selling it off-site is gonna create more traffic coming to the site. That's my thoughts. I mean,
So
so if they use 70%
to
of them,
summarize the whole thing, 9 to 4, Monday through Friday, no sale of stone,
Have less truck.
crushed stone,
yeah.
something along those lines. Jess, you can,
So crushing operation allowed for purpose of reusing materials on the site, no sale on the site, hours of operation 9 to 4, Monday through Friday.
correct.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. I will revise
And
that.
as far as like the truck washing, things like that, I think we'll just leave that to Mass DOT.
Right, you said DOT deals with that.
I believe so,
Leave it to
yeah.
them. All right, so that's C17, where are we now?
And then, C22, I think, was a duplicate. Under environmental conditions, B37 was, I believe B37 addressed that as well.
That was the one having to do with organic fertilizer, right?
Yes, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, so. Yes,
So this is another condition from Todd Baldwin, and I agree with you, it's a little bit inconsistent with the previous one, which was a condition included in the Saugus Ridge, so that's why there's a bit of a tension between the two. Did you want to include a reference to organic fertilizers here? Is that?
Organic, and I think the word sparingly, I mean, I don't think anybody's gonna overuse chemicals just for the sheer cost alone. I don't think they're gonna say, let's throw more chemicals. I think that's kind of redundant too. I don't know if we need to strike that or not, but I don't think that's gonna become an issue. But I would like to see organic if,
I don't think it hurts to keep it in there.
that's fine, okay.
Okay, so I'll update that to refer to organic fertilizers as well. I don't have any other ones to highlight in this section, so if there are any other ones that the board members want to discuss, we can get into that. The next ones that I have are in section E.
C24, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So with the plowing aspect of it, I think possibly up to the board, have a requirement in there to clear 10 foot from Route 1 that's either less than or equal to the snowbanks on Route 1, so that there's not mounding and blocking line of sight.
Within 10 feet of Route 1, you said?
10, whatever the board seems,
Yeah,
10,
geez.
15,
Yeah.
just so that they don't put a snow mound on the left side of the entrance and you can't see traffic coming down
Right.
Route 1. So I would say like to the equivalent of the snowbanks on Route 1 or less than.
So I'll update that one.
Yeah, is it to be clear?
So where are we now?
The next one I have is E2, unless the members have any other ones you want to discuss.
I'm sorry, what is it?
E2.
E2.
And then actually on that same one, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, under D, conducting routine inspection and maintenance, I would just say have a record to be made available upon the request of the town engineer or inspectional services.
Okay.
Basically just a maintenance
Makes
record.
sense.
Okay, so here and later.
Okay, got it.
So now we're moving to E2?
If you're ready to go there.
Yeah.
E2 pertains to the issue of the special permit that was brought to the board's attention by Mr. Long from 1988, which pertained to the buffer zone to residential properties. As has been discussed with the board, you have the authority to waive conditions of prior permits, including this one, and they've requested that you do that. The condition as drafted would require there to be a buffer zone of 15 feet, which I believe the plans are currently showing now. It's vegetated and there are fences that are shown. The issue here that was raised by the developer to me has to do with the pipeline easement and whether there can be fencing across that. So I requested that the developer address that issue and provide a copy of the easement to determine whether things like fencing or other things like signage could be installed to ensure, similar to the issue that we were discussing a little while ago about the anglers and residents walking down to their property and trespassing, making sure that residents don't walk down the the width of the pipeline easement as well.
Okay.
Currently, it's cleared by the pipeline company for obvious reasons. They want to be able to get back there. So it'll depend on the language of that, whether there can be a condition here that specifies that there can be a fence or something else to keep the residents.
Yeah, can there be a fence over the pipeline area?
That's what, the easement will determine that. If it says yes, it does. If it says no, it
I think in the
doesn't.
last meeting, I had asked if they could put some type of material, like crushed stone or something that would deter people from walking in there. Civil engineer, I believe it was, said that that was not permissible. So maybe like verbiage in here saying in accordance with the easement would remedy that issue.
Yeah, if the easement doesn't permit it, the board doesn't have authority to require it, where there's a private property easement that's in place with a third party. So if it can be permitted, it can. If it can't, it can. They can only do so much as they're able to do. So that is the final condition. From there, we get into the decisions on waivers, if you're ready to go there.
Could we just have a 2-minute break? It's been an hour and a half we've gone at it, so.
Transformed the neighborhood between that and the local community.
All right, so we're all back.
Yeah.
I just want to mention I was amiss at the beginning of the meeting. I didn't introduce the board. Mr. Robert Northrup, Ms. Stephanie Romano, Mr. Peter Rossetti, Mr. Frank Federico, Mr. Chris Riley, myself, Tom Travis, and our attorney, Jesse Sherman. Also present, I don't know which you went, but our alternate, Stacy Herman Durant. Right?
She had to leave for early morning meeting.
Okay, I'll just say she was here for most of the meeting. All right, where are we, Justin?
So we're on the waivers.
Yep.
So
Okay.
if you want to go to that section, that starts at page 37 of the decision. This one, it probably makes sense to just go through each one. Most of them, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on. They're pretty self-explanatory. But if we just start at the first one, the first waiver, they've requested a waiver of the temporary multifamily housing building moratorium. That expired back in 2021, but it's still on the face of the bylaw. So I've specified here denied as unnecessary because the requirement is not in effect.
Okay,
I don't have page numbers on my copy because I printed it out and are we under exhibit 2, decision on waivers?
Decision, yeah, exhibit.
So this guy right here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
The next waiver request is, that's the use requirements of the bylaw, which would allow for the development of multifamily housing. This, as drafted, granted as conditioned. This one is necessary for the construction of the project. So this is essentially the main waiver that they need. The next waiver request pertains to permit requirements. And what they requested here is, as they've stated, seeks a waiver from this section as the zoning board of appeals is provided with the authority to issue all local approvals. What I've indicated here is, again, denied as unnecessary because the comprehensive permit by its nature includes all local permits. So any other permit that's required under local bylaw or ordinance, that's included in the permit. So this kind of a waiver is not necessary. The next request has to do with special permit requirements, also denied as unnecessary because the 40B regulations state that you don't have to get waivers from special permit requirements. So those are just not applicable. The next one is inclusionary housing requirements. That's the town's bylaw that requires multifamily housing developments to have 10% affordable units. As drafted, that would be granted as conditioned because the project is being permitted under 40B, and there'd be 25% affordable rather than the 10% that the town's bylaw would specify. The next one is section 21.4, we start to get into the Business Highway Sustainable Development District requirements. This first one requires a pre-application meeting for Route 1 zoning developments under that bylaw. Again, denied as unnecessary because it doesn't apply to 40B. The next one is section 21.9A. This is the requirement of the Route 1 zoning that calls for mixed uses, and specifically in its current form does not permit standalone multifamily residential developments. They have to include commercial uses as well. That's the intent of that bylaw. This one, to highlight for you, the second paragraph, the developer would prefer that language to be removed, which provides that the applicant is encouraged to consider implementing a commercial component. That's permitted in 40B. Commercial would be more in keeping with the intent of the bylaw, but they would prefer that language to be out. The board does not, in my view, have the authority to require commercial uses. They're simply not proposing it here. So leave it up to the board. It doesn't require them to do anything. All it's saying is encourage them. They would request that it be removed. I have no problem with removing or keeping it.
It would make sense to not have it because that would encourage additional parking requirements, and you don't have signage to say there's things in there, so it doesn't make any sense to have it.
So I'll delete that and change to granted as conditioned.
Sounds good.
The next one is section 21.9F. This is another use requirement to allow multifamily, standalone multifamily, and again, granted as conditioned. The next waiver is the dimensional and density regulations. They have requested waivers for frontage, side yard setbacks, height in the BHR residential district, sub-district, density, and relief from the hillside protection bylaw. These are included here, granted as conditioned. And the only notable exception here is on the hillside protection. I've included a sentence that requires the final construction documents to include the extent of protected slope to be shown on the plans, but otherwise granted as conditioned. The next waiver has to do with parking requirements, 1.5 spaces per studio or one-bedroom units and 2 spaces for all larger units. They have requested relief to allow the site to have, I think that may be a typo there,
6, 7.
219 spaces as follows: 49 existing garage, 88 new garage, 82 new on-site. I'll just confirm that that's accurate.
That's correct.
Waiver, as drafted, waiver granted as conditioned solely as to the parking count and to permit the project to implement a shared parking arrangement in the adjacent parking structure. The next waiver has to do with connection to internal streets and driveways of abutting properties zoned business highway. What this section, and there's a couple of other ones that are related to it, this is a requirement of the zoning district that contemplates that properties that are both zoned business highway connect to each other through mutual grants of easements to allow a reduction in the number of curb cuts and driveways on Route 1. They've requested a plan waiver on this one. We talked about this earlier, plan waivers, to approve the project as shown on the plan, to forgo providing an access to connection to Forest Street. What I've drafted here is waiver denied as unnecessary. All adjacent properties with Forest Street frontage are not zoned business highway. Therefore, this section imposes no requirement on the project to provide an access connection to Forest Street. So I think that the concern here, and this is one that the developer did highlight to me that they had concerns about. In my view, the requirement of the bylaw is clear. It does not contemplate connections to the forestry properties because they're in a single-family residential zoning district. So compliance with this requirement would not require or even encourage or allow for that connection to those properties to be made. And moreover, as we discussed a few minutes ago, there's a specific condition that prevents that.
This wouldn't have any impact on something like Hockeytown, would it?
This would, so we'll get to that in just a minute on a couple of the other waiver requests. But what the bylaw contemplates is this project would grant a waiver to Hockeytown. And Hockeytown, if they ever develop, they would provide an easement
Right.
to this project site. So that potentially if Hockeytown redevelops at some point in the future, maybe they access their site through the development driveway rather than having a new curb cut on it.
Okay.
How would that impact the 39 spots on the boulevard?
To be determined, that's something that they would have to come back to the board, and I think that would be part of the Hockeytown application.
Okay.
So if that one's clear, the next waiver request is 21.12B1, which requires that the roofs be pitched. They have requested a waiver of that to allow a flat roof. This one, the developer has objected to the language in the last sentence of this pertaining to solar ready. We talked about that earlier, and I'll modify this consistent with what we discussed there. And they've also objected to providing screening around the HVAC equipment on the roof because they don't believe it's necessary to provide that. So I'm deferring to the board on that as to whether you want screening around the condensers and heat pumps and things like that.
Because of the angle, the height of the building and the angles, no one's really going to be able to see that unless they're flying over. And screening is probably not gonna help for that.
I think it was addressed by the sound study too, saying that the screening, because of the height of it, it wouldn't actually reduce, or like the sound transmittance wouldn't impact the neighborhood. Because I feel as though we discussed this.
Yeah,
So-
so what he testified to was that the noise essentially goes out like a line of sight.
Yeah.
So if you're already up 75 or 100 feet above where the abutters are down on Forest Street, it's not gonna hit their line of sight, it's just gonna go up and out.
So based on the peer review, it sounds like that's actually not needed.
Okay, so I'll delete the sentence about the screening and modify the language on solar ready, consistent with what we talked about. Apart from that, as drafted, it states that the waiver is granted as conditioned, no roof decks on the roof, they're not proposing any, nor access to the roofs by residents. They're not, again, the plans don't indicate that there's any access to the roofs.
The roof deck at, that one's actually pretty nice. I like it. You don't like it?
No, it's expensive to put an elevator up to a roof and then insure it.
Yep.
Well, it's right on the same level as the fifth floor, so
Yeah.
it's not requiring another elevator. So at that type of situation, it's just the end of the building, but it's a nice view up there.
I'm sure the insurance is still,
Yeah. It's got I don't know, it's got a big, it's covered, pretty hard to climb over it.
If we're good to move on from that one, the next one is 12B7, which pertains to the materials that you use or requires them to have the appearance of wood brick or stone, and if painted, have a non-metallic finish and non-reflective. As drafted, I've indicated here that it's denied as unnecessary because the materials that they've shown are cementitious lap and panel siding with the appearance of wood and masonry veneer, which complies, in my opinion, with the section. So what they've shown essentially complies with the bylaw,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
We had the same thing with the Resident Inn across the street. There was an issue with the material they were gonna use on that. And we went back and forth for a while on it, but it seems to have worked out, so it's similar to what they're proposing.
Okay. It also says, it specifies non-metallic and non-reflective
Yeah.
to avoid that issue.
So Jesse, just to clarify, if we waive this section, the applicant would still be held to use the specified materials by the building commissioner?
That's specified by this requirement of the zoning bylaw.
Okay.
Yeah.
But by the plans that they submitted, they would have to build to those plans anyway. So if we waive this, it's
Yeah.
still gonna be irrelevant because they're gonna have to go by the plans they provided the board, correct?
They are, they have to go by both, essentially. The building commissioner, when he gets the building permit application, he'll receive a copy of the final plans, he'll receive a copy of the comprehensive permit, which would include the board's finding that what they've shown on the plans complies. So then what he'll do is he'll look at the plans, final construction plans, and the preliminary plans that they've provided to the board. Do they match? Yes or no? If they match, then everything's good to go.
Okay. I'm asking because, true or not, there's stories that another project in town promised one thing and delivered something much less appealing, so if they're held to what's in the plan, that's fine.
I think I know what you're referring to, and it probably doesn't need to be said which project. If we're good on that one, the next one is 12B9, which requires front building facades to be oriented towards the street or driveway. They've requested a waiver of this because the rear building is facing the rear of the site. As drafted, the waiver granted as conditioned, it's not feasible for them to provide a front-facing building for that one because of the orientation of the site. The next one is 12B11, which it's a design requirement that requires visual interest while reducing the appearance of bulk or mass with facades interrupted at least once every 80 horizontal feet with offsets. And then it talks about roof, again, the roof being sloped. They've requested a plan waiver on this one to allow the buildings that's shown as on the architectural plans. What I've included here is a partial approval of the waiver to allow the flat roof, as we requested that waiver elsewhere. The request for a waiver of the design requirement to provide the elements to reduce the appearance of building mass. The board, my recommendation to you, this ultimately is up to you. In my view, this waiver is not, strictly speaking, necessary for the construction of the project. It's a matter of the architect has designed it one way, would prefer to build it that way, but it's not unreasonable for the board, in my opinion, to require it to be built to the specifications of the bylaw. And that would, in this case, require adding a couple of horizontal elements every 80 feet. Those are little architectural bump outs. You see them all over in modern architecture. It's a simple change that would be made to the construction documents by the architect, not a significant expense, not significant change, in my opinion. So I'll ultimately leave it to the board to decide if you want that. We can delete it if you don't feel that that's important. It was not recommended by your architectural peer review, but again, up to you.
I would agree that it's probably not necessary because the majority of the building is not going to be seen by the general public. You're coming down Route 1 at 60 miles an hour, you're probably not gonna notice it, even if you were looking for it. And the only people who are primarily going to see it are the people living there. And I don't think it's gonna matter to them. I don't think it's necessary.
I also think by adding those bump outs, you're adding more square footage to the building.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, as you mentioned, it's not visible. And we also did get 3D renderings, and I thought the building was, for a building, you know, appealing and aesthetically pleasing as designed. My main concern would be adding more square footage to the building.
All right, so I think the majority is for, it's not necessary.
Right.
Okay.
The
I'll make that
whole
change.
not being necessary.
I will make that update. The next one is 12B12. This has to do with building facades and other design elements to break up the facade, such as awnings, porches, canopies, towers, bays, etc. This one, as drafted, I've stated that it's denied as unnecessary. They're not showing blank facades. There's windows, there's design, different materials that are being used on the building. So what I've included here is that the board exercises discretion to find that the project complies with this section as it's included in the zoning bylaw. The objection here, the developer has objected to the portion of this that specifies that there are no exterior balconies or decks on the building. Perhaps, and again, this is up to the board to decide, perhaps a happy medium between decks wherever they want and decks where the board wants them would be no decks that are overlooking Forest Street or something like that. So that you don't have people who are able to look out from their decks over those properties.
I'm a little confused by that. So the building, I don't think, had decks or balconies.
It did. There are some decks.
I must not have seen those.
I don't recall any decks either.
Some of them are Juliet's.
You know, the problem with decks is that people tend to hang things on them. And even though you have a bylaw that, or an agreement that's part of your lease that says you can't put towels and things on it, you're not supposed to, it can be a problem. I assume that's gonna be part of the leasing, that there'll be a restriction that you can't put plants or whatever out there. Okay.
Were those pulled?
Get to the plans.
What's that?
I said, I can't get to the plans.
I'm afraid I can't either without the Wi-Fi. Were those, off the top of your head, Jesse, do you know if those were full-fledged balconies, like walkout balconies, or were they solely Juliet?
I think there's a mixture.
Yeah, I don't know
We
off
can,
the
we
top
can
of my
look
head.
at this. Can you do it? No?
I mean,
There are, so in the renderings, I did
You able to get
find
them?
the one, yeah. May 13, 2025, there are balconies. On the rear of that building, overlooking Forest Street, there are balconies. They're kind of on the corner.
Yeah, that makes sense, that they would be on the corner units.
I'm indifferent as long as people aren't hanging things over. I mean, I thought the building was aesthetically pleasing, so as long as they're not cluttering the balconies, I don't have an issue with it, but I don't know.
I don't think they were.
Here's an example. This is the Forest Street is down.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So we got the bank of corner balconies there.
Okay.
I must overlook that.
So does the board want to delete the language about the decks, balconies then?
I would say yes, delete.
Okay. The next one is 12B14, and this is related to the previous one, no blank walls essentially, and it requires the walls, there's a percentage of how much has to be wall and how much has to be window. As I've drafted this, waiver denied as unnecessary, and again, the board is finding that the project complies with the section because there are windows, there are walls, and it appears to comply, at least to my eye, with the bylaw. I've specified here that for all building facades visible from Route 1, final construction plans shall call out the percentages of window and wall coverage, essentially to just confirm that they're in compliance. The next one is 12B19. This has to do with loading docks, service doors, loading doors. Again, the project appears to comply with this, so I've included a finding that the board finds that it complies. with this requirement. The next one is 12B20, which requires mechanical equipment to be screened and if located on roofs screened, organized, and designed as a component of the roof design. You've indicated that you do not wish to require screening, so I'll modify this as it's drafted and update it so that it would be granted as conditioned, based on our discussion tonight then, if that's...
Just to confirm, that was our peer review that said the acoustical transmittance would go straight out.
That was the developer's consultant,
Okay,
but that's, I did review it, it's a standard methodology.
okay.
And a reputable company who did the report, his analysis, and in my view, it's consistent with what I've seen in
Okay.
other projects. The next one, 12B22, which, again, this has to do with pitched roofs, parapets, mansard roofs. This is another design requirement having to do with the roofs, generally speaking. As drafted, waiver granted as conditioned, and this repeats previous conditions. No roof decks on the roof, no access to roofs, they're not proposing any, as we just talked about. There is additional language about solar ready, which we've talked about, so I'll add what we've changed there and delete the provision about screening of HVAC. 12C. This has to do with providing common use areas. It gets fairly specific in the requirements and talks about having a gazebo, patio, pavilion, clock tower, or paved patio area. What I've drafted here is, except as stated, the waiver is denied as unnecessary because the board is finding that the flexible open space and community gardens shown on the project plans satisfy the requirements of this section. And then I've added an additional requirement that they provide the board with proof that the holder of the gas pipeline easement has assented to the permanent installation of the improvements that they're proposing to install in the easement area. And then I've also included a waiver granted for the requirements of a fountain, which is a specific requirement.
Just backing up a little bit,
Mhm.
I see where number 3, it talks about planning, the planning board needing to approve something.
So this one, this comes down to what we talked about in the beginning, where the board stands in the shoes of all local boards. So anytime the local bylaws say review by the planning board or conservation commission under local bylaw or selectmen, you're the reviewing authority.
Okay,
So
so, don't worry about it.
Yep.
All right, I got you.
you're reviewing this, they don't go to the planning board
Okay.
for any reason. The last sentence here, waiver granted as conditioned for the minimum area requirements, which is 5% of the floor area of the development, and for the requirement to install a fountain, which they've not proposed to include. And then waiver of subsection 5 granted to the extent that these are forbidden by the pipeline easement. So again, like we've talked about, if they can do it, they can do it. If they can't, they can't. The next one is 12D1. This one, the project complies, so I've indicated that it's denied as unnecessary because the project does comply. The next one is...
Question on that one.
Mhm.
So where we're gonna have the banked spots,
Mhm.
and that may not comply, and also where the approved parking plan has to go in front of the police now, would it be beneficial to the board if we grant that? So if they do add more spots, they're not constrained by having to have ends on the rows?
I can add that.
I don't know
That sounds good.
if, okay.
Okay,
I'm thinking just to give them freedom to add more spots.
that
or-
would be more, yeah, more spaces available there.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll make that edit. The next one is 12D2. This one requires that there be no more than 15 parking stalls without a break in the parking for a planting island. That's just a 1 or 2 foot strip of grass, usually, maybe a tree. This one, as I drafted that, denied is not necessary for the construction, and included a requirement for 2 strips in that long, unbroken bank of parking spots at the rear of the site. The plans appear to indicate that there's room to install those. It's a beautification measure, but it's up to the board if you want to require that to be done. If it's not important to you, we can delete it though.
I would think to give them as much real estate as possible to add spots, as opposed
So-
to having a planter.
Yes, so you say it's not required.
No, I would allow them to not put the petition in so that they could utilize that space for an extra parking spot potentially.
Okay,
I agree with that.
all right, so I will change that then to grant as conditioned then.
I believe that's the sentiment.
Yes.
Okay.
So the next one is 12D5, which requires a perimeter planting area at least 10 feet in width along all property lines and street ultimate rights-of-way lines. They've requested a plan waiver and as drafted, granted as conditioned solely as to the property line that abuts the office parcel because they're not proposing a planting strip there. Otherwise, the project appears to comply because they're providing that 15-foot buffer on the rear of the site and on the abutting properties to the sides. The next one is 12E2, which requires 6 foot in width sidewalks as drafted here, granted as conditioned to authorize the sidewalks that they propose, which are 5 feet, and then specified that the sidewalks need to meet applicable ADA and architectural access board requirements. That if they're applicable, they'll be required to comply with those no matter what. If they're not applicable, then they won't.
Okay, that one was E3 and not E2?
That was E3.
Yeah.
Yep. Next one is 12E5. This is another one that has to do with accessibility. They have requested a waiver because not all of the sidewalks are ADA accessible, and the developer has objected to the waiver as drafted because they're concerned that it goes beyond state or federal law. I'll propose to revise this to confirm that this is only pertaining to state and federal law requirements to the extent they're applicable and not intended to impose any additional requirements. Otherwise, what this as drafted could potentially require is that sidewalks that cannot be made accessible because they're on the slopes of the site and don't need to be accessible under state or federal law would have to be under some kind of separate local requirement. So I'll update that. The next one goes back to the issue of light sources, that's 12F2, and light sources not be visible from the street. We talked about that before. That has to do with a condition earlier in the decision that unshielded light sources can't be visible from Route 1. And as drafted here, the board determines that the project complies with this section. That's how we handled it before. The next one is 12F2. Light fixtures shall not be located within any buffer zone separating an existing residential district. They've requested a plan waiver, and as drafted, I've stated waiver granted as condition to allow exterior lighting within 100 feet of the rear lot line as shown on the landscape plan as reasonably necessary for safety, and all such lighting shall be shielded and dark sky compliant. with no unshielded floodlights pointing towards residential properties. Next one is 12H1, which is another one having to do with loading docks, utilities, HVAC, dumpsters, and other service functions. As I've drafted that, I've stated that the board exercises its discretion to determine that the project complies with this section.
So this is 2112H1, and that's basically just saying that they're gonna incorporate the aesthetics of it into the architectural design. But if I remember correctly, the dumpsters and meters are gonna be located within the parking garage. So is that like a moot point?
So say that again?
So this is saying to design the building to make it more aesthetically appealing for the gas meters and the dumpsters. But the dumpsters are gonna be located within the parking facility of the unit in a trash compaction room. I think the gas meters are also in the, or are they on the exterior?
I'd have to look at the plans. The intent of this is that essentially that they not put dumpsters and meters right within the buffer zone or front and center for these kind of properties. So they haven't proposed that, and there's no loading docks that they're proposing here. So, ultimately, again, up to the board to decide, but as I read the bylaw, I think you comply. I think they comply with the requirement. The next ones are all related, and this has to do with that issue we talked about before, with shared driveway access between parcels in the VHSD. As drafted here, and should note that the developer objects to these, that the requirement is that they make commercially reasonable efforts to comply with the section to provide for consolidated shared access driveways through reciprocal easements with the properties, and that would be Hockeytown, and then the property in front of the site, the hotel property. This, I'll leave this up to the board if you feel strongly about this. If you don't think that that's necessary, then we can delete the language, and that would eliminate the requirement for the access easements to adjacent properties. The applicable to is again the Hockeytown, if they were to redevelop at some point in the future.
Would it be feasible though with those additional parking spots, as I mentioned before, because those are gonna line the boulevard?
Well, that would be up to them. The way that the requirement is drafted is it's ultimately up to the planning board to decide the feasible requirements. That falls to you to decide that. So what they would have to do is go to Hockeytown and say, we've got this requirement, we want to negotiate a shared access easement to say, if you ever develop, you can go here, or maybe the developer wants to provide an access to the Hockeytown for some reason. I don't know if they would for any reason, but they could if they had an easement.
If I'm understanding correctly, I think it should be kept so that if
Yeah,
Hockeytown develops, they can have one entrance as
Okay.
opposed to two.
I'll go along with that.
Yeah, agree.
I don't know, I think you're planning for something down the road that may not happen in the immediate future, and putting that requirement on them is going to handicap the parking issue, and it's also gonna create because the pipeline in that area, I think it's gonna be a problem. So, I would prefer not to see it.
The pipeline may
The
be
gas
an
line.
issue.
Huh?
The pipeline, I didn't think of the pipeline, that could definitely be an issue. The parking, I think as Jesse mentioned, they could negotiate a shared parking situation essentially, or,
Well,
In theory,
they're not gonna be negotiating from a point of strength, that's
Right,
for sure. So, you're handicapping them.
I guess I swung back to my original opinion, saying that it wasn't necessary. Is that what I'm saying?
yeah, I didn't take into account the gas line.
Yeah.
All right, we'll say it's not necessary.
okay. So I'll revise these then, And those, the easement provisions will be taken out, and we'll talk about that at the next meeting with revised language to make sure that that's consistent with how you want to handle those. 13A5 is next. I think we're getting close here. And this has to do with multiple driveways. They have not proposed multiple driveways, so denied is unnecessary, is how I've worded that. 13A6, let's see. It says that new development proposals are encouraged to collaborate with Mass DOT about the feasibility of including an acceleration lane, deceleration lane, auxiliary lane, or other similar design solution. What I've stated here is the applicant shall make reasonable and good faith efforts to collaborate with MassDOT to provide acceleration or deceleration lanes. Ultimately, the question whether to include those is up to the state to require or not require. The Avalon has them. The Saugus Ridge, I think, has them. So they may be required.
Ridge doesn't have it, it's in front of Walmart.
Ah, okay.
It's in front of Walmart, and then you can decelerate there and take that up the back way and get to the ridge. But it's not really associated with the ridge.
Okay.
I don't think it's practical in that area.
Yeah, but I go into Walmart
Yeah.
and then go up the side of Walmart and go in the back way.
So the way this is,
It's
this,
behind McDonald's.
But for here, I don't think it's practical.
Okay,
Well, but that should be,
that's
I
COT.
think we should leave it up to DOT and leave it in.
yeah, that's
You
how
don't
that's
have any
written, right?
choice.
Yep.
DOT has the last say in that.
DOT has the last say, and if it says if MassDOT determines implementation is not feasible, the applicant may omit it. So
Okay,
they collaborate with MassDOT like all other projects do. If MassDOT says yes, they do it. If they don't, they don't.
okay.
Okay, the next one, we're going beyond the zoning bylaw. The next one is section 500 of the town's general bylaw. That's a blank section, it doesn't have any requirements. What they may be referring to is the subsidiary sections, which are 501 through 517, which would be other permits by other local boards or commissions or departments. So what I've included here is if that's what they intended by this request, it's denied as unnecessary because the comprehensive permit is a master permit that includes all of those approvals. So that's the same as where they requested the site plan approval and things like that. Those are not necessary because they're already included in the approval that the board is granting. The next one is a regulation of DPW Article 3, Section 2B, little d, Roman numeral 7, which requires 60% annual load of total phosphorus generated from the project to be removed. The testimony by the applicant's civil engineer was that that's not feasible, and as drafted, granted as conditioned. And then similarly, the last one is section 2.b, little o, which requires a border around retention basins. And the testimony of the engineer was that that as well is not feasible for the design. So I've included granted
I
as
think it's
conditioned.
a safety rules too, right? Didn't they bring up safety about fencing that in?
That may have been, I don't recall that specifically, but as drafted, it would be granted. So that's the last, all 47 pages. So I've got some homework assignments to update the decision. I'll do that and recirculate to the board as soon as I can get that to you.
Okay.
Do we have time at the next meeting if there's any questions that come up in the meantime to address those, or is that putting us against
Well, we should schedule another meeting, and it needs to be before next Friday, or I suppose we can meet on next Friday. Yeah, we will have time to discuss it.
So to schedule next meeting, I'm thinking next Thursday.
Thursday the 11th. I'm not gonna be available.
Not available Thursday.
I probably wouldn't be, I could do Monday or Tuesday.
Who's available on this Tuesday? Give you, when, Jesse, how quick can you turn around when you need to do?
I can get this back to you by tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, how's Tuesday look for people?
Okay for me. You're away?
I think that works.
Not Tuesday, no.
No.
Tuesday's no good? But Tuesday is good.
I can do it.
The 9th?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
night.
be-
Tuesday the 9th.
It's gonna be tough.
That works for everybody?
Descend to the table's okay.
Good.
Frank,
Sorry?
Ninth?
Yep,
Tuesday?
Tuesday's good.
Tuesday the 9th. At 7 o'clock,
Okay.
and I'm assuming that the annex will be available. I know the clock usually,
I'll check for you.
funny, I gotta ask SCTV when we can have a room. Tuesday, I don't know who would meet in the annex. That wouldn't be the planning board, wouldn't be the conservation. So I believe it'll be available.
So we have to vote on Friday.
Gotta vote by Friday.
Jesse, can we add something to that environmental area?
Sure. Go, which section is that? That's,
Hang on, I just,
So do we have to vote Tuesday?
Either
I
that
have,
or
I
we have
just-
another meeting between
Nothing on the
then and
website.
Friday.
I'll be going away this Maxwell's birthday weekend.
Yeah,
I have,
I think the answer is yes.
Yes, Tuesday,
Yeah, Tuesday we will go.
if we can just
likely, yeah.
add something about the stormwater ponds. I like, because that's going into the ground, that water. Okay, can that be done on a two-stage filtering system before it goes into the ground? Can we add that?
Is it more of an engineering question?
so maybe you can you elaborate what you?
Well, it's only because it's with the chemicals that they're gonna be using on the ice
Uh-huh.
in the springtime, all that stuff is gonna go into the ponds. It's gonna have to go into the ground eventually. So if it's filtered before it goes into the ground, it'll help it.
So I think we addressed that
Yeah.
using calcium chloride. as-
Because it's gonna end up, eventually, it'll end up in the pond down below where the anglers are.
Yeah,
So-
the,
That's what I'm trying to prevent, something like that.
maybe what I can do is have a conversation with the civil
Okay.
civil engineer and get his view on
Yeah.
that. I'm obviously, I'm not a civil engineer, so I'm
No.
a layperson in that, but,
Okay, only because, I talked to a couple of different agencies and, they said that the water should be tested on the Angles Pond, maybe every spring and fall,
I don't think so.
to make sure the chemicals don't seep down.
we can, why don't I'll talk to the civil engineer about that. The filtration that the stormwater structures provide, my understanding is it's more about removing things like
Tuesday's no good for
oil and
Anything.
sedimentation.
What?
You're gonna get stuff like that on the,
Okay.
coming down.
Yeah, but you're also gonna have it coming in from the other side, Main Street.
I'm flexible to Monday or Tuesday.
The pond is lower than Main Street.
Monday works better.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have it coming in.
Monday works
I
better
think we
for
also
you?
addressed that with the fact that
So you're gonna have it
Okay,
coming
that's
from all
okay.
directions.
I got too many
I know, but at least,
conversations going on.
but that's direct coming down the hill,
Yeah.
Okay.
you know?
Well, Jesse's gonna talk to the civil engineer.
Okay, that's
See if
fine.
there's anything
Yeah.
else. Is there any chance instead of Tuesday, are people available on Monday?
I can do,
Monday, yeah.
yeah.
Monday, I'm getting those.
Monday,
By the 12th.
Make that
it's
work.
the 8th.
I'm getting those, second can't make Monday.
Monday, the 8th. Monday, 28th could work.
I got a note from Stephanie on
Wednesday, yes. Tom,
So-
Wednesday.
We're good
Free
for
Wednesday.
Tuesday.
I'm not,
Okay.
so we're still stuck on, Monday doesn't work. Thursday doesn't work. Wednesday doesn't work with Peter and
We can skip director's meeting.
I. Well,
I think we missed last one anyways.
no, I have to be there.
Did Thursday?
We'll figure it out for Tuesday.
Okay, you sure?
I've got somebody else from my office, I can probably have it.
Okay.
Tuesday.
And you can have conversations, as I've mentioned with Jesse before,
Yep.
with total, I mean, I know there's rules, what you can't add in, but I asked him to be completely transparent with you to get this moved along,
We appreciate that, thank you so much.
okay?
Yeah.
So even if you can't be here, somebody else from your office, I'm sure there aren't that many things, I don't think there's a lot to clear up. That you might be able to do it on some phone call.
Yeah.
And during the meeting, our participation
Yeah,
is very limited.
Thank you, we do appreciate all that you're doing.
So Tom, just to confirm, we're gonna meet Tuesday,
Tuesday,
7 PM at the annex.
7 PM at the annex.
We're gonna have to work with the town clerk to get that posted tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
All right, can you do that?
No, that's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stephanie is back part-time, takes care of most,
I know.
but she's gone for the rest of the week.
Yep.
So don't have her to post it. So if you could post it, that'd be great.
Yep, I'll take care of it.
Mr. Chairman, before we wrap up, there's a couple of other conditions I want to make sure we address.
Okay, I think I have one down here.
Yeah, so we talked about the landscaping along Route 1 to make sure it's
I didn't see
consistent.
anything on that.
Yeah,
in
make
the
sure that's
conditions.
consistent with the rest of the project. The applicant already agreed to that prior.
I put that in my notes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see anything on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up.
And the last one from me then is, in the applicant's draft decision, they included a number of no work days. Basically, no Sundays, no holidays.
in there.
I would suggest, as a trade-off for we're going to add rock crushing, that we take away work on the day after Thanksgiving and December 24th and December 26th. For a bit of peace and quiet for the neighbors.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
everybody good with
that's
that?
fine, yeah.
What is Christmas following?
25th. This could be more
Okay,
than one
we
year.
done?
This is true, yeah. More
So
like
we
that.
have the next meeting set, and I think we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded?
Second?
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.